Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm not used to using a mic, so hopefully I'll keep the audio on cue. Thank you for having me. It's my first time to Lopez Island, so it's beautiful out here, and it's been nice and relaxing. Little mini escape from my 3 boys back at home. But I'm grateful to be here. Thank you for having me. So 2 of the questions I get most are, why a book on pansies? And how did I get into flowers? So I will start with how I got into flowers. I started as an active duty Marine. I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, and then I spent 16 years as a 911 call taker and dispatcher. And after 21 years of extremely high stress, life emergencies, I felt like I needed a change. And I joked with my husband that I wanted to shift to puppies or flowers. And it ended up that it was flowers, and Floret was hiring seasonally. So we took kind of a leap of faith, and I started in a seasonal position at Floret. This was a little over 10 years ago, and then found my way into flower farming and then authoring. So this is me and Aaron. I think this is the second year that I was out at Floret. We were planting the peony field, but many people have an origin story with Aaron at Floret when you get into the flower farming world, when you're growing flowers on large scale. And she is so generous with her knowledge. If any of you don't follow her yet, I do recommend it. She shares everything she's learned through her hard work and experience, tons of video resources, their shows, really, really good information. But when you work with her, she's also generous in the leftover plants. She has this wonderful habit of over ordering, and she sends her employees home with all the extras and buckets full of flowers and seedlings. So my garden kind of started just really with, where do I put all this? So we cleared space. I live on about 2.5 acres, but I only grow on about 3/4 of an acre. It's very tightly compacted, and I think I get away with tight spacing because we have this gentle sea breeze on the south end of the island, whereas I think normally plants that close together might get diseased, but I can kind of push the limits. So it's a small space I grow on. We cleared our back property of all the blackberries. My husband put up a large deer fence, which I noticed most of you have out here as well, to protect the flowers. My boys were very little, and they took part in all of it at that time. It was seed sowing and watering. They helped with everything, getting the flowers. And it was actually my son's idea to start at a farmer's market. He asked, can we share our flowers at the farmer's market? So that's where the Three Brothers Blooms came from, is that it was my 3 boys that kind of propelled us into getting outside of our own garden. That is my middle son doing the harvesting. He did a fantastic job. So we sold at the farmer's markets, we sold bouquets locally, and that was kind of how our business started. It expanded, obviously dahlias. Everyone always needs more room for dahlias. My little first greenhouse. We did marigolds, we did pumpkins. We went through all the flowers, and then I found my way into pansies. So around the time I started at Floret, Erin was doing her own trial on pansies, and it just blew my mind that she was growing them for cut stems, for cut flower length, and also the colors. I had never seen pansies in these colors and patterns. I had seen the red and the yellow and the purple with the blotch, and they're 2 inches tall, and they go under a shrub, and you rip them out come April. So this was all new for me, and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And it created a bunch of questions that I couldn't find answers to. So down the pansy rabbit hole I went. I tried to find a book on pansies, and there was none. The only substantial book I could find was written in the 90s by a gentleman named Rodney Fuller out of the UK. And it's an exceptional book, but it reads like a textbook. It is hardy, and it is probably the best book ever written on pansies, but there's very little pictures, and it's not very approachable. So I kept looking, and I ended up sourcing every book ever written on the pansy that had any substantial information. And I'm taking notes, and I'm trying to answer my own questions, and it just made more questions. And eventually I got to a point of, there needs to be a book. Like, I can't be the only person with these questions. There needs to be a book on pansies. And so I just felt I was in the place to write it. So it kind of started going that direction. But when you look back at the original violas and how they all trail. They all have this natural trailing habit. The compact pansies that we see, that we know, were bred to be that way. That's not the natural habit of where the garden pansy started. And as I'm looking through these books and I'm seeing these paintings of cut flower pansies, and there's chapters in these books written in the 1800s on pansies as cut flowers. So it's not a new idea, it's just kind of a forgotten one. And then I wanted to know, well, why? Why did they go out of favor? Why was it forgotten? Why did they get switched? So I started more information. And then I started to find more varieties. So this is Chianti. This is probably still the most popular variety I sell. It's bred out of Italy by a family called the Frio family. And the colors and the ruffles and the textures are just extraordinary. And this one does really good as a cut flower. And I noticed looking in the old books that there are pansies from the late 1800s, early 1900s that looked similar. So then I thought, well, where did all those varieties go? Why don't we have more of them now? And I kept researching. These are some more beautiful varieties from the Italian varieties. And I found this book that was written in 1866 out of Paris. And there's 25 plates and they're all painted from life. And the colors and the textures just blew my mind. And again, they showed those trailing habits. So I really wanted to include this in my book to show that pansies aren't newly being grown as cut flowers. It's forgotten, and they could absolutely be cut flowers again. They do really beautifully, and there's so many new varieties that we can now get back into the market, hopefully breaking that stereotype that they're only good for cool weather shrubs. So underneath those shrubs, in the shade, just the blotch, there's so much more to them than that. So I grow them, I use them in wedding bouquets, I use them in market bouquets, I use them in beautiful arrangements. This is Viola Arkwright Ruby, and those stems are probably 22 to 24 inches. So what you're doing is you're not doing the tiny stem, which is I think where most people think that you need to cut. It's the trailing habit. You're inviting that natural trailing habit to grow upwards in a straight, sturdy stalk. And these stalks are very, very sturdy. I love black pansies. I know not everyone likes black flowers, but for me, they are the little black dress of the flower world. They are very elegant and velvety, and they look beautiful in a white vase. And they do really good as cut flowers as well. So this is an arrangement from my book, and it's filled with black pansies and dahlias and roses, and you can see that they are long-stemmed and beautiful, and they last great in a vase. In fact, I had a vase of cut pansies on my windowsill. And not only did the buds on them bloom, new buds formed and bloomed. They were in that vase for over a month, continuing to bloom, and then I think spider mites got them. But they last a very long time in a vase. So I put everything I learned into a book, hoping to share it and break the stereotypes on pansies and that they're only good in pots, and hopefully get more people to realize their potential, hopefully inspire more people to hybridize them and bring around some of those new colors that we've lost. The book was photographed by my childhood friend who happens to be a professional photographer, so I got very lucky with that. Everything you need to know to grow the pansies in general, but also as cut flowers, is in my book. I poured all my knowledge from all my research, from all the books that I had read into this. The tips that I definitely think people need to remember excuse me, is temperature and light and humidity. So pansies germinate best at temperatures between 60 to 68 degrees. They really need that range to germinate well. If it's colder, they will germinate, but it sometimes takes over a month. If it's warmer than 70, they stop germinating altogether. I sow them on the surface of the soil, and I sow them under lights. I do seed trays because the seed I sell is expensive, and I don't want to risk slugs or birds getting it. Pansies and violas are very good about self-seeding. Obviously, the hybrids won't come back true. So you can certainly scatter them or put them in a pot to grow them. But for me, I want to make sure every seed has a chance to become a full plant without dealing with the birds and the pests and the slugs. So I do seed trays and grow lights. It's a very simple setup. Anybody can do it. But the humidity domes are also really important because moisture is key too. So however you're germinating your pansy seeds, you want to make sure that the seed and seedling never dries out. That's a really big part of it. And then light, it's been taught for decades that pansies need darkness to germinate, and I have never found a variety of pansy that needs darkness to germinate. Every single pansy I have ever grown, everyone in my book, everyone I've ever photographed, is germinated on the surface of the soil under full light from the first day. So it helps stop them from being leggy. I find they germinate quicker. This is what works for me, and it's definitely what I recommend. So for transplanting out, usually about 1 inch 4 true leaves seems to be the time that they're the hardiest. They do like cold weather, so I put them out about 3 weeks before the last frost. And then if you're growing them for cut flowers, usually about 2 to 4 inches apart, because you want them close together. You want them to support each other as they grow up, and that's how you train that trailing habit to become these long stalks that are cuttable. They also do really great with roses or at the base of sweet peas. Both pansies and sweet peas really like a lot of water, a lot of moisture at the root base, so they do a really good job if you grow them at the base of your sweet peas, and they'll kind of trellis right up with the sweet peas. The other option is raised beds, which is what I do, just keeping them close together for that trailing. And then when you're cutting for cut flowers, I always recommend cutting down to the first joint of the plant. When you see the pansies start to trail, there's always kind of this first joint. And by doing that, not only do you get the longest stems, but if you apply a couple inches of compost to that now kind of little bare root base, they will send up new basil shoots, and they will often rebloom. And then you could possibly get perennials. And I have some pansy plants that are 4 and 5 years old that come back as perennials, bushier and bushier every year. So I think there is so much potential to the pansy that people just have forgotten. It's been overlooked, it's been rewritten, and I'm really hoping to get people to see them in a different light. Even in the old gardening books, there was several gardeners that swore second-year pansies were the best. In fact, they never let them bloom the first year. They would pinch them and deadhead them so that all that energy went into the plant and went into the roots. And then in that second year, they let them bloom. And so they just naturally became perennial plants. So seeds, as I was growing them, seeds were really difficult to source. Seeds for anything other than what everybody's used to seeing at the hardware stores and the grocery stores. And I found this family, the Frio family in Italy, and they had the most beautiful varieties. But I wanted to know why everyone couldn't grow them. So when I started ordering from them, the minimum order was $1,000, which is a lot of money for pansy seed, especially if you're a small grower. Most people are not going to spend $1,000 on pansy seed. So I asked if I could come visit, and my hope and my mission was to convince them to sell their seed on a very small scale, to allow everyone the chance to grow these pansies. So I went out to their property. They have been in business since 1870. It is still in the same family. They still have the original catalog of all their original customers. It is a very heartfelt family business. They very much care about their employees. It's oh, thank you. All the talking. They care about their employees. They have a very small team. And their minimum order is $400,000. Which blew my mind. So they're explaining to me they don't just do pansies, they do petunias, they do sunflowers, they do tomatoes, and they do international shipping, but their customers are ordering in these massive, massive quantities. And with their small team and their family, it doesn't make sense for them to then try to send out thousands of little tiny orders. The amount of manpower, the amount of time, it's not in line with their business. Additionally, this is Anusha, and her father Renato is the senior at the farm right now. They have multiple PhDs, and they teach at the University of Naples, and she has a PhD in agronomy, and they study molecular science, and it was absolutely fascinating. Renato believes in using plant genetics to make a plant more applicable to its climate. So rather than fertilizers and pesticides and all these unnatural things, he tries to breed his plants so that they do better without the need of any of that. He crossed one of his tomatoes with a petunia and made a cut flower petunia that has 20-inch stems and isn't sticky, which is just mind-boggling to me. So it made sense once I was there why they couldn't sell these pansies on a small scale. And these are some of their pansies. Really, really beautiful. Lots of ruffles. And they've been doing pansies since the early 1980s. So this is my oldest son, and this is Renato, and that's his vintage Fiat and his dog. I think his name's Fumier, which means lightning. And I brought my oldest son with me because he wanted to see Italy, but Renato really took to him, and they disappeared in that Fiat for the whole day. I don't even know where they went to this day. But I wanted my son to experience kind of this side of it. I expected that this would be his least favorite day. He's really not into flowers much anymore. When he came back, he told me that was his favorite day there. I think meeting the family and seeing this side of it and learning about the family business, it was nice for me to see how much he loved it. But I think Renato also really took to him. I think that a lot of times in business, you can put on a face and you can kind of come across as the impression you want to someone, but children are like drunks. They are clear. There is no pretending with them. It is so translucent in their character and who they are. And I'm very blessed that my son is an amazing human. And I think that that friendship between them was also kind of a compelling factor that at the end of our visit, Renato offered us an exclusive partnership, which they've never done before. So they basically said, we appreciate your book. You brought us so much business. We appreciate your passion and understand your need. So this is our solution. So they offered that I would be essentially their hub to disperse their seeds in small quantities throughout all the US and Canada. So that was a big thing that I did not see coming, that really shifted the kind of the course of where I went. So I thought, well, gosh, I guess pansies are it now. This feels like something that's much bigger than me. So I do 2 seed sales a year now. I do one in the spring and one in the fall. And I go out to Italy once a year and I go through all their trials with them to see the best varieties, the ones that we think we should release next. It's really exciting. It takes time, but I'm very hopeful that this will help get the pansies back out there, get them in favor, and make them very accessible to anybody who wants to grow them. In addition to Italy, they're doing a ton of work with pansies in Japan. So about a week after I got back from Italy, I had an invitation. This is Mr. Isao Sato. He's in Takasaki, about an hour and a half north of Tokyo. And he invited me to come out for a few days and see the work he's been doing in pansies. And a lot of the Japanese, they took the Italian varieties and just kind of went even further in a different direction with color and with ruffles. So this is his greenhouse. He started apprenticing at Tagawa Gardens in Colorado back in the 80s here in the US. And then about 15 years ago, he really fell into the pansy rabbit hole when he had this just fluke pansy that caught his attention. So he thought, well, I really like that one. So he took it and he started hybridizing off just that one pansy. And every year he pulls the ones that are most exceptional. And I think now he says he does thousands each year, but there's a team of just 2 women that narrow it down to the top 500. And then those are the ones they move forward with each year. But the colors are incredible. The shapes are incredible. It's really fascinating, the direction that pansies have the capability of going. And a lot of them are reminiscent of the varieties that were kind of lost in the many years past. So it's really nice to see them coming back around. Pansies and bearded irises are the only flowers that bloom in essentially every color. They bloom in red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, white, brown, and black. And you can see sometimes multiple colors on one flower. They're really, really exceptional. And because he's using a lot of the original viola traits, the trailing habits, they also are fragrant. All his pansies, all the Italian pansies, they're fragrant and they smell kind of like chocolate. Really, really good. If you put them in a vase in your car or in a room or in your bathtub, oh my gosh, absolutely amazing. So this is Antoinette. This is probably his most popular variety. And again, my mission in visiting him was how can we make these available in the US? So the difference with Japan from Italy is that Japan doesn't really deal in seeds with their pansies. Even in Japan, it's through plants. So the plants are available almost everywhere, hardware stores, grocery stores, garden centers, but they don't really deal in seeds. So the nice thing was it propelled them, and Tagawa Gardens now works with ball seed, and you can now get plugs for Antoinette and then his second other variety, Twilight, but they don't do seeds. And he says he doesn't have plans in the near future for seeds. Hopefully that changes. At least they are available now. We do have some nurseries I know in Seattle are starting to carry his pansies, and you can always order directly from Ball, although they're a little bit pricey. But they are really beautiful, and it's just neat to see that It's shifting the pansy into a different light. It's bringing it back into favor. It's palettes and textures that florists are using. I'm seeing a lot more florists use pansies in their work. Very beautiful. This is his other variety, Twilight, that's also available in the US now. But they also have a huge pansy cut flower market in Japan. And I was able to go to a greenhouse for a gentleman who's been growing them and specializing in cut flowers for 40 years. So these are his market bunches that were going to the main flower market to be auctioned off. And again, 22-inch stems, and they're fragrant, and they're beautiful. And there you can see the workers assembling them for the bouquets. So it was really fascinating to see the cut flower side of it in Japan as well, that they're also realizing, hey, these pansies have so much more potential than people have been giving them credit for. And this is one of his greenhouses. So he does them all in rows, and he does netting, and that's how he supports them to get that trailing habit upright, is through 2 layers of netting. You can kind of see it in this photo here. And his name was also Mr. Sato. So it was Mr. Sato and Mr. Sato. So that brings me to the present. So where I am now is through that open door with the seeds from Frio. That's kind of the direction I feel like I'm meant to go, is just continuing to make pansy seeds more available. I'm really excited. I'm excited that the interest is there. I'm thrilled Mr. Sato came out in July. I hosted him and he was able to talk about his pansies, his first trip to the Pacific Northwest. More nurseries are carrying the Japanese pansies, more seeds accessible for the Italian varieties. It's nice to see pansies kind of getting back on the map. So my hope is just to keep continuing that and furthering that. My publisher has started referring to me as the ambassador of overlooked flowers. I do have a second book coming out, not on pansies, a different, in my opinion, overlooked flower. So I think I'll be able to announce that in April, but yeah, that's the pansy. That's kind of the gist behind it. I hope you will take a peek through the book. I know your library has a copy, but I'm hoping you'll give pansies more of a try. They're edible. There's the other thing, they're edible. So even pop them in with your vegetable garden. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Anything I didn't cover that you would like me to explain more on? Yes.
So when you said to grow with sweet peas, when I plant my sweet peas on the fence, I plant them on the north side of the fence, and then they grow towards the south side, and then they, bloom that way. And then, so would you plant them north of the sweet, or would you plant them on the south side of the fence?
So pansies do need full sun. If you want the most vibrant flowers in those long stems, you want at least 6 hours of sun. It's actually, I don't even get long stems until usually June. It's kind of those warmer temperatures of what draws that trailing habit. When most people would rip them out, that's when they're just starting to get those stems that you would actually use for cut flowers. So I would say wherever they're going to get at least 6 hours of sun, if they're on the north side and they're not blocked by the sweet peas, I'm curious with the setup, if the sweet pea stalks would then shade them all day, they might not do well. They do benefit from shade. Obviously, pansies do great in some shade. The afternoon scorch is a good thing to protect them from. But all my pansies are full sun all day. From the first time it comes up till night, they're in open beds and they get a full day sun. The trick is really just the roots. And because sweet peas and pansies both love water, that's why they do so well together, because they both need that nice cool water about 6 inches down for their roots. But I would put them where they definitely get sun and see how they do. Any other questions? Yes.
So you did talk to Italy and Japan. How do you research that those are the people who need to track down?
Oh, a lot of furious searching, really. So the Frio family I was introduced to because Erin had been trialing their pansies during her pansy trials. She used to sell pansy seed. She sold seed for the Chianti mix, which again is still the most popular. So I knew the Frio family were the ones behind those pansies. So that's kind of where I started in just reaching out to them and explaining, hey, I wrote this book. I'd love to send you a copy. Can I come see your pansies and talk with you? And then for the Japanese varieties, I just saw a picture of them. I don't even remember where, and that took a long time. I had tried reaching out to Mr. Sato for I think 2 years before I finally was able to get into his radar, and he invited me out. So it was just a lot of persistence, really, was how I found my way into those gracious invites.
Are you growing your own seeds?
Yeah, so most of the varieties that I love are hybrids, so they don't come back true. Hybrids are obviously labor intensive, which is why a lot of the pansies disappeared in the early 1900s as World War I and World War II. Most of the time, the hybridizers at that time were men, and they were all called off to war, and there just wasn't anyone to carry on the annual hybridizing of the plants and keeping up with the seeds, so they all just disappeared. So I'll sometimes collect my own seed just for fun, especially with some of the violas that I know are gonna come back true. I never pull a pansy anywhere they want to self-seed. They are allowed to be free reign. But I don't sell any of my own seed. All the seed I sell is the same that I have sourced and grown to ensure it's top quality and incredible germination rates and very high-end pansy plants. So. How do I get it packaged? From Italy? For the seeds I sell? Yes. So my process is I order in an obscene amount of seeds and pay an obscene amount through customs, which is awful. And then I do every packet myself. So I hand pack, carefully measuring to make sure the seeds are accurate, into small glass seeds. And then I put those into a seed packet that's printed by a small company here in the US. They're really wonderful. And that's the packet you get. So yeah, it is me through and through. So it depends on the varieties. The prices that I have, I try to be, oh, yes. Sure. The Italian varieties are $6.95 a packet, and that's 25 seeds. And then the varieties, I do carry a couple other varieties that are just very popular. It's still a little bit hard to find, and those are $5.95. And then like some of the violas that are more common, but still really beautiful. I think I have $5.95 or $4.95, but you'll get 50 seeds. So it depends on the variety, but they are all on my shop, and it does give the description of how many seeds are in the packet and where the seeds come from. No, no, I don't. The whole point in writing the book, the whole point in selling the seeds is I want people to feel these are accessible. I know growing pansies from seed is intimidating to a lot of people who've never done it because the seeds are very tiny and they are expensive. You know, $7 for 25 seeds is kind of pricey. So you want to make sure that they're going to thrive. The last thing I wanted to do is come up with a solution to that and then turn it into another problem because it's too expensive. So I try really hard to make sure that, I'm able to continue my business and support my family, but that it's also fulfilling that mission of trying to get the seed to anybody who wants to grow it.
And I was one that said I thought Nancy's were boring. And offhand, I saw her say, how about you some golden donkey? First thing I said, right, so easy. I like that. Just want to share that with you. I want to share with you is what she did in the morning. You mind?
I don't mind. I was a Russian cryptologic linguist, so I deciphered Russian communications. I was intel in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. So she had to learn Russian, and it has a different alphabet. Can you imagine?
A question on the seed generation. You sow directly on the soil in your trays. How many seeds do you use per cell?
I do 2 to 3 seeds per cell because I don't like to thin them. I have such a hard time thinning because I feel sad for each one I pull out if it doesn't survive when I pluck it. So I try to be very intentional and that I never have to thin anybody out. So I normally just do 2 to 3 seeds per cell, and they grow well that way. You can get away without thinning them at that. If you have 6 seeds per cell, you're probably going to want to thin them out. And it doesn't need to be a big investment. You don't need a greenhouse. You don't need 20 trays. My first seed setup was a tiny rack. I think I got for 40 bucks off Amazon, and I had 2 lights, and I bought a 3-pack of trays. And those same trays are still lasting me, years and years later because they were good quality. So it doesn't need to be this big, expensive setup. You can do it on a small scale, but I do find for pansies, seed trays really are the best way, just between temperature and moisture. Yes. So I used to use Sungrow organic propagation mix, and I really loved them. And then it became hard for me to source. And Erin actually just last week released her magic soil recipe, and she showed 3 trays side by side with just Pro Mix, which is I think what I use now, and then a second tray with Pro Mix and fertilizer, and then a third tray with some other stuff she added. And it's astounding to see what a difference that starting soil made. So I use her magic soil recipe, which I could not possibly quote off the top of my head, but it's free. If you go to her website, you can find it and just sign up and she'll send you that recipe. And so it's Pro Mix and then some other stuff added in. That was just astounding the difference it makes, but yeah.
I'm curious about viola, just small pansies, are a solar
Yes, there's actually 4. There's violetas, which kind of just disappeared off the map and got lumped in. But the difference is essentially every pansy is a viola, but not every viola is a pansy. And I did actually start the book in explaining the very scientific side of how you classify one from the other. But they've been so crossbred now that unless you're the person hybridizing, it is really hard to tell. It used to be, you could tell by the petals and you could tell by this or that, but it's really hard to tell now. Unless you know the scientific side behind the hybridization of it. But essentially, violas tend to be smaller. They tend to be a smaller bloom. They tend to be more fragrant usually, so that's always nice. But the pansies are definitely the larger, fuller flower. So I just had a seed sale about a week ago, and I sold 6,000 packets in 2 days. To let you know that pansies are surging, and I only had about 11 varieties. So there's still 4 varieties left, are the varieties that I stock the most of because they tend to be the most popular, and it's just on my website. My website is threebrothersblooms.com. I do have a newsletter to keep you abreast of sales. It shares when I go to the pansy hybridizing, it'll share on all the other flowers I grow, and it gives an early access code for sales because it's hard to predict how fast seed's going to sell. I've had some varieties sell out before the sale actually started. It sold out just in early access. So it's nice to be on that early access list, but there are still pansies available on my website right now.
Her seeds are great, and they're really do well, and they grow them out. And also
Oh, thank you. Yay. Yeah, I'm very careful. I don't even trust the Postal Service. So even though I know Fario seed is exceptional, I always germinate it again, just to make sure that customs or somewhere else along the line didn't do something that rendered the seed poor germination rates. So the seed I send out is all trialed myself to guarantee that it's really, really good germination.
Maybe information is going to grow. This coming in March, to see Christians in mission. Yeah. All right, we have March trees, maybe you have more. Otherwise, I have to put up whatever that I do Right? We're gonna have a great family fundraiser for our school garden and garden for that as well. And you know, last year was the best snack ever. And now I've had more for the last few years, but and so start your start, minimally, or just have a little Mother's Day weekend is Saturday. May 11th, is that the 11th? And please feel free to bring in your magazine, see that you have, make it into our share table. That's very successful. We're kind of looking at, okay, who's in the value mode and we're supposed to be on value mode, right? Make it okay, guys. Go for the yard and share it out and go to the moment.
Thank you.
In here. Yes. I saw the Japanese farms, they grow them with netting.
Mhm.
Over, do they have a tendency to grow so compacted, they get mildew?
They can get powdery mildew, leaf spot. I think leaf spot is the biggest nemesis. Slugs are huge on pansies. So the only thing I use is Sluggo Plus. Don't use normal Sluggo. Sluggo Plus is really good. It's OMRI certified, so you can use it for organic gardening. But yeah, it depends on the area. You're kind of just going to have to trial because you do need them close together to keep those stems from scraggling and falling over. Netting is a great support if you're using them in raised beds, if they're not trellising. But they are subject to mildew and leaf spot and all the other things that a lot of plants can get when close together.
So if you see the start of mildew, what is your suggestion to the plant?
I use a spray that Christian's Nursery actually put out for their roses, and I have found it's fantastic for pansies. It's just the water, baking soda, and a dash of dish soap, and I think they have it on their website for the exact ratio, but it works fantastic for powdery mildew on pansies. And then when they get really bad leaf spots, I actually spray them, I'll deadhead everything, and I spray them with a copper spray, and they usually come through it just fine. So there's only been a few plants that I've lost to leaf spot. And I haven't lost any to powdery mildew as long as I treat them with those. And we're really careful on my farm. I do everything very organic and very safe just because I have 4 dogs and kids and tons of wildlife. And we want the birds of prey because they keep the rodent population down. So the last thing we want is anything poisoned. So all that stuff is really safe to use.